The words hung in the air between them like smoke, changing everything in an instant. Marcus gripped the edge of her desk, his knuckles turning white as the implications crashed over him. One night. That's all it had taken to completely upend two carefully constructed lives. As his boss, Elaine, looked up at him with those piercing blue eyes, vulnerable for the first time since he'd known her, Marcus felt his world shift on its axis. How could he handle another child when he was barely keeping it together with his daughter after his wife's death? And how could he navigate this with the woman who controlled his livelihood? The woman he tried so hard not to fall for. If you're enjoying this story so far, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more emotional journeys that explore the complicated reality of modern relationships and family life. Marcus Jenkins had mastered the art of the morning routine. At 5:30 a.m., his alarm would buzz, giving him exactly 30 minutes to shower and dress before waking 6-year-old Lily. By 6:45, they'd be out the door, Lily dropped at before-school care, and Marcus would make it to Horizon Publishing with 5 minutes to spare before his 8 a.m. editorial meeting. This precision was his armor. Since losing his wife Claire to cancer 2 years ago, routine had become his religion. It kept the grief at bay and ensured Lily had the stability she desperately needed. "Daddy, my shoe is untied," Lily announced, her small voice breaking through his mental checklist as they rushed toward the car. "Come here, sweetie." He knelt down, tying the pink sneaker with practiced fingers. "Remember what I taught you about bunny ears?" "I know how," she pouted, her brown eyes, so like Claire's, flashing with determination. "But today I want you to do it." These moments always caught him off guard, the small ways she still needed him, even as she grew more independent every day. He finished the bow with a flourish that made her giggle. "All set, Princess Lily. Chariot awaits." The drive to school was filled with Lily's chatter about her upcoming class project on butterflies. Marcus nodded at appropriate intervals, his mind already shifting to the manuscript deadline looming at work. As senior editor at Horizon, he was responsible for their most promising new author, a responsibility that had him working late most nights after Lily went to bed. "Love you to the moon," he said, their traditional goodbye as he dropped her at the colorful entrance to Little Explorers Academy. "And back again," she finished, skipping away without a backward glance. At Horizon's sleek downtown offices, Marcus slipped into his usual seat in the conference room just as Elaine Richards, the publishing house's formidable CEO, began speaking. At 42, Elaine had built Horizon from a small indie press to one of the most respected publishers in the industry. Her sharp business acumen was matched only by her editorial instincts, and her intimidating presence. "The Malone manuscript needs substantial revisions before we can move forward," she was saying, her voice carrying the slight British accent that somehow made every criticism sound more cutting. "Marcus, I need you to work directly with her on restructuring the middle section. The deadline stands." "Of course," he nodded, making notes. "I've already identified the weak points. I'll schedule a call with her today." Elaine's gaze lingered on him for a moment longer than necessary, something he'd noticed happening more frequently in recent months. He'd been at Horizon for 5 years, but it was only after Claire's death that Elaine had taken a more personal interest in his career, promoting him to senior editor and assigning him their most promising projects. The meeting dispersed, and Marcus spent the day deep in editorial work, breaking only to text Mrs. Patel, his elderly neighbor who picked Lily up from school when he worked late. By 7 p.m., the office had emptied, leaving only the cleaning staff and a few dedicated editors. A knock on his door frame pulled his attention from the manuscript. "Still here?" Elaine stood in his doorway, her usual tailored suit replaced by a more casual black dress. Her dark hair, normally pulled back in a severe bun, fell in waves around her shoulders. "Deadline waits for no man," he smiled, gesturing to the pages spread across his desk. "Have you eaten?" she asked, stepping into his office. "I was about to order something." This was new territory. In 5 years, they'd never shared a meal outside of company functions. "I should get home to Lily," he began automatically. It's with Mrs. Patel tonight, isn't she? Your neighbor. Elaine leaned against his desk. You mentioned she stays overnight sometimes. The fact that she remembered this detail from some casual conversation months ago caught him off guard. Yes, but... One meal, Marcus. You've been working 14-hour days for weeks. The company won't collapse if you take an hour to eat. There was something in her tone, not quite vulnerability, but a softening of her usual commanding presence. Against his better judgment, he found himself nodding. 1 hour. 1 hour turned into 3 as they moved from takeout in his office to drinks at the quiet bar around the corner. Elaine was surprisingly easy to talk to outside the office, her sharp wit directed at amusing anecdotes rather than business critiques. She asked about Lily, listening intently as he shared stories of his daughter's latest adventures. You're a good father, she said, swirling the remnants of her wine. It's rare to see someone balance it all so well. Balance? He laughed. I'm barely keeping my head above water most days. That's not what I see. Her eyes met his, serious now. I see someone who rebuilt his life after unimaginable loss. Who puts his daughter first while still excelling at his career. Do you know how exceptional that is? The compliment warmed him more than the alcohol. When was the last time someone had seen his struggles and called them strength? What about you? He asked, suddenly curious about the woman behind the executive persona. You've built an empire, but you never mention a personal life. Something flickered across her face, a shadow of old pain, quickly masked. I chose my career, she said simply. Some doors close when you make that choice. Do you regret it? She considered this, her finger tracing the rim of her glass. I regret certain moments of hesitation. Times when I could have reached for something beyond work but didn't have the courage. The air between them changed, charged with something neither had acknowledged before. Marcus realized how close they were sitting, how the bar's dim lighting softened her features, making her look younger, less guarded. It's getting late, he said, his voice rougher than he intended. Yes, she agreed, but neither moved. Later, he would struggle to remember who leaned in first. All he knew was that suddenly they were in a taxi, and then at her penthouse apartment with its panoramic city views, and then they weren't looking at the view at all. In the darkness of her bedroom, with the city lights creating patterns across the ceiling, Marcus felt something he'd thought died with Claire, a connection that went beyond physical attraction. Elaine was nothing like his late wife. Where Claire had been soft and nurturing, Elaine was all sharp edges and ambition. Yet in those private moments, he glimpsed a vulnerability in her that few ever saw. Morning came with harsh clarity. Marcus woke first, disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings before memory flooded back. Beside him, Elaine slept, her face peaceful in a way it never was at the office. For a moment, he allowed himself to simply look at her, this woman who had been a constant in his professional life for years, now irrevocably changed in his personal one. Reality crashed in. Lily. Work. The impossibility of whatever had happened between them. He slipped out of bed, gathering his clothes silently. He should wake her, say something, but what? This was his boss, the woman who controlled his livelihood, the career that supported his daughter. One night of connection couldn't erase the power imbalance between them. So he left, scribbling a note that said simply, I'm sorry. This was a mistake. The next 3 weeks were excruciating. At work, Elaine was coolly professional, treating him exactly as she always had, as though their night together had never happened. He followed her lead, burying himself in the Malone manuscript and coming home to Lily each night with forced cheerfulness that didn't reach his eyes. Daddy, are you sick? Lily asked one evening as he pushed food around his plate. No, sweetie. Just tired from work. Mrs. Patel says you look lovesick, she announced, making him choke on his water. What's lovesick? Mrs. Patel has a very active imagination, he managed, making a mental note to be more careful around his perceptive neighbor. The truth was, he couldn't stop thinking about Elaine. Not just their night together, but the glimpse he'd had of the woman behind the executive mask. The way she'd listened when he talked about Claire, about his struggles as a single parent. The unexpected gentleness in her touch. It was impossible, he told himself repeatedly. She was his boss. He had Lily to consider. His life was complicated enough without adding a relationship that could jeopardize everything he'd worked for. Then came the morning of the quarterly planning meeting. Marcus arrived early as usual, preparing his presentation on upcoming titles. The conference room filled gradually, but Elaine's chair remained empty, unusual for someone who valued punctuality as she did. 10 minutes past start time, her assistant entered instead. Ms. Richards sends her apologies. She's feeling unwell and won't be in today. Concern flickered through him. In 5 years, he'd never known Elaine to miss a meeting for illness. The day dragged on, his worry growing with each hour. By evening, he found himself outside her building, a container of soup from the deli she favored in hand, telling himself this was merely professional courtesy. When she opened the door, he knew immediately something was wrong. Her face was pale, her usual perfect appearance replaced by loose pajamas and uncombed hair. "Marcus," she said, surprise evident in her voice. "What are you doing here? You missed the meeting." "I was concerned." He held up the soup awkwardly. "I thought you might need this." She hesitated, then stepped back to let him in. The apartment was exactly as he remembered, though now in the early evening light rather than midnight shadows. "You didn't need to check on me," she said, leading him to the kitchen. "It's just a stomach bug." But something in her voice made him look more closely. The way her hand trembled slightly as she reached for a bowl. The unusual vulnerability in her posture. "Elaine," he said quietly. "What's really going on?" She set the bowl down carefully, her back to him, shoulders squared as though preparing for battle. When she turned, her expression was one he'd never seen before, fear mixed with a strange determination. "I'm pregnant," his boss whispered. The words hung in the air between them like smoke, changing everything in an instant. Marcus gripped the edge of her counter, his knuckles turning white as the implications crashed over him. One night. That's all it had taken to completely upend two carefully constructed lives. "Are you sure?" he finally managed, his voice barely audible. "3 tests and a doctor's visit sure," she replied, a hint of her usual crispness returning. "I'm 6 weeks along." 6 weeks. The math was undeniable. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "What would you have done differently if I had?" she challenged. "Written a better note before sneaking out of my apartment?" The barb hit its mark. He winced, acknowledging the cowardice of his exit that morning. "I panicked," he admitted. "You're my boss, Elaine. I have Lily to think about." "My job." "Your job is secure," she interrupted. "Whatever happens, that won't change." "That's not," he ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "I wasn't worried about my job. I was worried about us. About what this means." "It doesn't have to mean anything," she said, her voice carefully controlled. "I'm not asking you for anything, Marcus. I simply thought you should know." "Not asking," he stared at her. "Elaine, this is my child too. A child you never expected or planned for," she pointed out. "You already have Lily. Your life is established. I'm not looking to complicate that." "So what are you saying? You're going to do this alone?" "I've done everything else alone," she said with a small, sad smile. "Why should this be different?" The quiet dignity in her voice broke something in him. He crossed the kitchen in 2 strides, taking her hands in his. "Because it is different," he said fiercely. "Because it's not just about you or me anymore. And because," He hesitated, then pushed forward, because what happened between us wasn't just one night for me. It wasn't a mistake. Her eyes widened, that rare vulnerability returning. Marcus. I've spent 3 weeks telling myself all the reasons why we can't work, he continued. You're my boss. I'm still grieving Claire. Lily needs stability. But the truth is, I haven't felt this alive since before Claire got sick. You challenge me, you see me, not just as Lily's dad or an editor, but as me. This isn't about us, she said, pulling her hands away. This is about a child. A responsibility neither of us planned for. Then let's plan for it now, he insisted. Together. The weeks that followed were a careful dance of redefined boundaries. At work, they maintained their professional relationship, though rumors inevitably began when Elaine's condition became known. They agreed to take things slowly, dating properly while navigating the complexities of their situation. Telling Lily was Marcus's greatest fear. His daughter had already lost one mother, how would she react to this new development? They decided to tell her together, on a Saturday afternoon at the park she loved. Lily was initially confused, looking between them with furrowed brows as they explained that Daddy and Ms. Elaine had become special friends. Like boyfriend and girlfriend, she asked skeptically. Something like that, Marcus smiled, relieved she was following. And we have something else to tell you, Elaine said gently. I'm going to have a baby. You'll have a little brother or sister. Lily's eyes widened. In your tummy? Like me as mom at school? Yes, exactly like that. Lily considered this information carefully, her small face serious. Will the baby live with us or with you? The question caught them both off guard. They hadn't discussed living arrangements yet, both cautious about moving too quickly. We haven't decided all the details yet, Marcus answered honestly. But we'll figure it out together, as a family. Family, Lily repeated, testing the word. Then, with the directness only children possess, does this mean you're my new mom? Elaine paled slightly, and Marcus quickly intervened. Elaine isn't replacing your mom, Lily. No one could ever replace her. But Elaine cares about you very much, and she'll be an important part of our lives. Your dad's right, Elaine said, finding her voice. I would never try to take your mom's place. But I would like to be your friend, if that's okay with you. Lily studied Elaine with Claire's thoughtful brown eyes. Can I feel the baby? There's not much to feel yet, Elaine smiled, but in a few months, you'll be able to feel kicks and movements. Cool, Lily decided, attention already shifting to the playground nearby. Can I go swing now? As she ran off, Marcus and Elaine exchanged relieved glances. That went better than expected, he said. She's remarkable, Elaine replied, watching Lily with newfound appreciation. You've done an amazing job with her. We have a long way to go, he cautioned. This won't always be easy. Nothing worthwhile ever is, she said, surprising him by taking his hand publicly for the first time. The pregnancy progressed, bringing with it a host of new challenges. Elaine, accustomed to complete control over her life and career, struggled with the physical limitations her condition imposed. Morning sickness plagued her well into the second trimester, forcing her to delegate responsibilities she'd always handled personally. Marcus found himself in the unexpected role of experienced guide, bringing her ginger tea and crackers, adjusting meeting schedules around her worst periods of nausea. Their colleagues watched with interest as the formidable CEO increasingly leaned on her senior editor, their professional relationship visibly evolving. The board is concerned, Elaine admitted one evening as they sat in her apartment, reviewing quarterly projections. They're questioning whether I can lead effectively while preparing for maternity leave. That's ridiculous, Marcus frowned. You've built this company from nothing. A few months of leave won't change that. It's not just the leave, she sighed, rubbing her growing belly absently. It's the perception that my priorities have shifted. And they're not entirely wrong.